Hi again. In the history of Christianity, we've reached chapter 12, page 318 of Latourette's book, and this little chapter is entitled The Smaller Eastern Churches. We have repeatedly noticed the existence of churches which had broken away from the Catholic Church and had ceased to be in communion with it until well after the year 950, indeed, until the 16th century. Many more of these were to be found in the East than in the West. Some of these bodies completely died out, and we have only fragmentary information about them. Most of that which has reached us has come down from their critics. Such were the Paulicians. That's P-A-U-L, Paulicians. Some of the movements which have disappeared differed radically from the Catholic Church, not only in doctrine but also in forms of worship and in organization. However, several of the dissident bodies have survived into our own day, although with greatly diminished numbers. As we have suggested, they separated from the Catholic Church ostensibly on questions of doctrine, but in reality as much from regional, national, or racial opposition to the dominance of the Byzantine Empire and the Greeks as on creedal grounds. As at the outset, they were larger than the more drastic dissenters. Beginning with the 7th century, all had to face Islam. Sooner or later, although for some not until after 950, almost all of the territories in which they existed were subjugated by Muslims. Identified with national or racial units, they held out against the politically dominant Islam. However, eventually all dwindled in numbers, and today none is as strong as it was in the era with which this chapter deals. All that have survived have preserved, with variations, the structure and forms of worship which were theirs before they separated from the Catholic Church. All have a distinct clergy, with the main orders of priests and bishops. All have monks and monasteries. All have baptism and the Eucharist, and the latter is usually observed with an elaborate liturgy. Each has its creed. Each regards itself as preserving the gospel in its purity, and looks upon the other churches as heretical. In several of the lands in which these bodies enrolled, the majority of those bearing the Christian name, the Catholics were to be found under their own clergy, but as minorities, for whom a customary designation was Melchite. There were, as we have seen, Melchite or Catholic patriarchs of Jerusalem, Antioch, and Alexandria. It was a divided church which faced the expanding and dominant Islam, and the common danger from that rival faith did not bring its severed branches together. Indeed, by removing the common bond of political unity under a professedly Christian state, the Byzantine continuation of the Roman Empire, the Arab conquest led to an accentuation of the gulfs which kept the bodies apart. In Baghdad, for instance, the capital of the Abbasid caliphs, there were Nestorian, Jacobite, and Melchite communities. There resided the Catholicos, or patriarch of the Nestorians. On at least one occasion, when the Melchite patriarch of Antioch appointed a metropolitan for the Melchites in Baghdad, the Nestorian Catholicos strongly objected to the action as an infringement on his see, but the Jacobites also had a bishop there. During the early centuries of the period from AD 500 to 950, even after the Arab conquest, several of these churches displayed geographic expansion. By AD 950, however, and this becomes one reason for fixing that year as the terminal date of the era of the Great Recession, almost all, and perhaps all, were losing ground. Next time he deals with the Monophysites of Egypt, Nubia, and Ethiopia. I'll put in a link to a meditation Vivian did on the relation between church and state and how that determination, what is loyalty to God and what is our loyalty to the state we live in, has fluctuated over the last century and a half in the Watchtower world. So Rutherford, J.F. Rutherford, the second president of the Watchtower, his take on Romans 13 and our obligation to the powers. See you next time.